The massive alien warship hung in the darkness above Earth like a steel mountain, its hull gleaming with strange lights that pulsed in patterns no human had ever seen. Admiral Marcus Blackwood stood on the bridge, his tall frame casting a shadow across the control panels as he studied the blue planet spinning slowly below them. Around him, his crew of 12 different alien species worked quietly, their combined technologies representing the most advanced military force the galaxy had ever known. Blackwood had done this 47 times before. 47 worlds had surrendered after seeing his fleet's power. The routine never changed. Arrive, demand surrender, demonstrate superior firepower, accept submission, move on to the next target. Earth would be number 48. Communications Officer Veltar, Blackwood called to the crystalline being whose body reflected the bridge lights like a living diamond. Send the standard message. Veltar's fingers danced across his console, transmitting the same demand that had worked on every other world. Attention primitive inhabitants of the third planet. You are now subjects of the Hegemony Empire. Surrender immediately or face complete destruction. You have 1 solar hour to comply. The bridge fell silent except for the gentle hum of advanced technology. Blackwood expected the usual response: panic, desperate pleas for mercy, or immediate surrender. Instead, his communication system crackled with static before a calm female voice cut through the interference. This is General Rebecca Thompson of the United Earth Defense Command, the voice said, speaking in clear, unafraid tones. We've received your demand for unconditional surrender. Our official response is, you really don't want us to get creative. A wave of what passed for laughter rippled through the bridge crew. Tactical Officer Corvesh, a massive reptilian warrior whose scales gleamed like armor, hissed his amusement. Such strange words from primitives, Admiral. Should we begin the orbital bombardment? Blackwood studied the rotating planet on his main screen. His intelligence reports painted a simple picture. Humans were barely past their atomic age, still using crude chemical rockets and kinetic weapons that belonged in a museum. Their largest military vessels were smaller than his shuttle craft. Their governments couldn't even agree on basic planetary policies. Begin the demonstration, Blackwood ordered. Target their largest military installation. Minimal power only. We need them alive for labor duties. The ship's main weapons powered up with a deep thrumming sound that vibrated through the deck plates. Energy beams, each one capable of vaporizing entire city blocks, lanced down toward Earth's surface in brilliant streams of contained destruction. Then something impossible happened. The beams simply stopped. Not blocked by shields, not deflected by some unknown technology, but absorbed completely as if they had struck something that drank energy instead of being destroyed by it. Tactical, report status immediately, Blackwood barked, his confidence flickering for the first time in decades. Corvesh's claws clicked frantically over his controls, confusion evident in every movement. Sir, weapon systems show full operational status, but energy discharge reads 0. The beams are registering as completely neutralized. It's as if something down there is redirecting our power elsewhere. Before Blackwood could respond, another transmission crackled through the bridge speakers. The same calm female voice, but now with an undertone that made several crew members unconsciously step back from their stations. General Thompson again. We tried to warn you. Command wants me to tell you that we're still operating under Standard Engagement Protocol 7. Please reconsider your current course of action before we're forced to escalate. Blackwood felt something cold settle in his stomach. In 47 previous conquests, no species had ever mentioned protocols or escalation. They either surrendered or died. There had never been a third option. What is Standard Engagement Protocol 7? He demanded. The response came back immediately, spoken by a different voice this time. Younger, male, with an accent that somehow managed to sound both professional and casually dismissive. This is Colonel James Mitchell, sir. Protocol 7 means we're playing nice and following the rules of civilized warfare. You might want to take the General's advice and think about this carefully. Playing nice. Blackwood repeated the words as if they made no sense in this context. Yes, sir. See, we've got protocols all the way down to Protocol 1. Each number lower means we remove more restrictions on what we're allowed to do to people who attack us. Right now we're being polite. We'd prefer to keep it that way. Intelligence Officer Thalwyn, whose ethereal form flickered with obvious distress, suddenly spoke up from her station. Admiral, I'm detecting massive energy signatures from the planet's surface. Whatever they're using to neutralize our weapons is drawing power from sources I can't identify. The energy readings are impossible. Impossible how? They appear to be generating more energy than they're consuming, sir. That violates several fundamental laws of physics. Blackwood stared at the peaceful-looking blue world below, feeling the first stirrings of something he hadn't experienced in years: doubt. These humans spoke of protocols and rules as if warfare was a game with different difficulty levels. They absorbed weapons that could crack planets like someone might catch a ball. And they seemed genuinely concerned about his well-being rather than their own. "Sir," Communications Officer Veltar reported, his crystalline structure now showing hairline stress fractures, "I'm receiving multiple transmissions from the surface. They're offering us medical assistance and suggesting we might want to withdraw to a safe distance before they're forced to demonstrate Protocol 6 capabilities." "They're offering us medical assistance?" Blackwood asked slowly. "After we just tried to destroy their military base?" "Yes, sir. And they're asking if we need directions to the nearest uninhabited system where we can think things over safely without anyone getting hurt." For the first time in his military career, Admiral Blackwood found himself completely unsure of his next move. 3 days had passed since Admiral Blackwood's first attempt to conquer Earth, and nothing made sense anymore. He stood in his command center staring at casualty reports that read like comedy instead of military intelligence. His advanced alien fleet, which had conquered dozens of worlds, was being systematically dismantled by a species that still used gunpowder. "Explain to me again," Blackwood said slowly, "how we lost 12 scout ships to creatures who haven't invented proper space travel." Intelligence Officer Thalwyn flickered nervously as she consulted her data pad. "Sir, the first scout ship was destroyed by what can only be called a weaponized sound system. The humans broadcast something called death metal music directly into our communication arrays. The volume and frequency somehow overloaded every neural implant on the ship." "Music destroyed a military vessel?" "Yes, sir. The crew reported experiencing what they described as psychological torture before their ship's systems began shutting down. The second scout encountered inflatable decoys that not only fooled our advanced sensors but appeared to be making rude gestures at our pilots." Blackwood rubbed his temples where a headache was forming. "Inflatable decoys? Our sensors cost more than entire planetary defense systems." "That's not the strangest part, sir," continued Thalwyn. "The third scout ship was taken out by modified farming equipment. Specifically, a machine designed for harvesting crops that the humans somehow turned into a plasma cannon." Dr. Yithal, the chief medical officer whose tentacles changed color to show emotion, interjected with what could only be described as professional confusion. His appendages were currently a deep purple shade that indicated complete bewilderment. "Admiral, I have 17 soldiers requesting immediate psychological counseling. They all report the same thing: humans laughing during combat. Not nervous laughter but genuine amusement while being shot at." "They laugh while we're trying to kill them?" "Yes, sir. And they make jokes. We intercepted one transmission where a human soldier said, 'Hold my beer and watch this,' before destroying an entire hegemony position using nothing but a modified construction vehicle and what appeared to be tremendous enthusiasm." Down on Earth's surface, Colonel Sarah Andrews crouched behind a makeshift barrier watching another group of alien scouts approach her position. Around her, her engineering team was busy performing what they generously called maintenance on captured alien technology. "Martinez," she called to her chief engineer, "any progress with that fancy alien scanner?" Sergeant David Martinez looked up from where he was applying what he called percussive maintenance to a hegemony reconnaissance device. This involved hitting it repeatedly with a standard military hammer until it did something useful. "Well, ma'am," Martinez said, giving the device another solid whack, "I can't read any of these alien squiggles, but when I hit it right here, it starts playing what sounds like their radio chatter. And when I hit it over here, it seems to jam their equipment completely." "Outstanding work, Sergeant. Williams, what's the status on Project Kitchen Sink?" Private Emma Williams held up what had once been a microwave oven but now bristled with additional components that made Geiger counters cry. "Ready for field testing, Colonel. The engineering boys swear it should scramble their energy shields. And if it doesn't work, at least it'll heat up their lunch really fast." Andrews nodded approvingly. The improvised weapon looked like something a mad scientist might build in a garage, which was essentially accurate since that's exactly where it had been constructed. "Remember, everyone," she announced to her squad, "we're still operating under the Be Nice to Aliens protocol. Command hasn't authorized us to get creative yet." "What happens when they do authorize creativity, ma'am?" asked Williams. Andrews smiled in a way that made her soldiers simultaneously proud and slightly concerned. "Then we find out what happens when human engineers stop following the instruction manual." Back on the Hegemony flagship, Tactical Officer Corvesh was experiencing something his warrior culture had no words for: professional embarrassment. His scales had turned a pale shade that indicated confusion and mild panic. "Sir," he reported to Admiral Blackwood, "the humans have somehow managed to turn our own orbital bombardment system against us. They're using modified atmospheric processing equipment to redirect our energy weapons." "Atmospheric processors are industrial equipment," Blackwood stated flatly. "They're used for terraforming, not warfare." "Yes, sir." "The humans appear to have weaponized industrial equipment. Also agricultural equipment, construction equipment, and what our analysts believe might be children's toys." "Children's toys?" "Yesterday they disabled one of our destroyers using what their communications identified as a really big slingshot loaded with what appeared to be a refrigerator." Dr. Yethal's tentacles had now turned completely purple and were writhing in distress. "Admiral, the situation is deteriorating rapidly. We've been monitoring human communications, and they keep referring to their current tactics as going easy on us. They're requesting permission from their commanders to get creative with their response." "What does that mean exactly?" "We're not certain, sir, but we intercepted a message from someone called General Thompson stating that they're still operating under Don't Be Mean to the Aliens protocols." Communications Officer Veltar's crystalline form was flickering like a malfunctioning light bulb. "Sir, we're receiving another transmission from the planet." "Put it through," Blackwood ordered, dreading what he might hear. The voice that came through the speakers belonged to General Thompson again, still maddeningly calm and professional. "Admiral, we've been tracking your fleet movements. We're going to give you one more opportunity to withdraw peacefully. After that, Command is authorizing Protocol 5. "What is Protocol 5? Blackwood asked, though he suspected he didn't want to know. "Protocol 5 is when we stop being polite and start getting creative. Trust me, Admiral, you don't want to see what human creativity looks like when we're annoyed." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in absolute silence except for the sound of Dr. Yethal's tentacles nervously tapping against his console. Admiral Blackwood stood before the holographic display showing his fleet positions around Earth, watching red warning lights flash across dozens of ship status indicators. 2 weeks of what should have been a simple planetary conquest had become the most confusing military disaster in hegemony history. "Give me the damage report," he ordered, his voice tight with frustration. Tactical Officer Corvesh's scales had turned an alarming shade of gray that indicated severe stress among his species. "Sir, the humans have somehow converted our own orbital bombardment weapons into a planetary defense system. They're using modified industrial equipment to catch our energy beams and shoot them back at us." "That's impossible. You cannot reverse military-grade energy weapons with industrial machinery." "Yes, sir." "They've also weaponized what appears to be farming equipment, construction tools, and yesterday they destroyed one of our cruisers using what their communications called a really big rubber band and some old kitchen appliances." Blackwood closed his eyes and counted to 10 in 3 different languages. "A rubber band?" "A very large rubber band, sir. Approximately 2 kilometers long. They used it to launch what appeared to be a modified garbage truck directly into our ship's main reactor. The explosion was visible from orbit." Dr. Yethal's tentacles had turned a deep purple color that medical staff recognized as the biological equivalent of a nervous breakdown. "Admiral, I now have 43 crew members requesting immediate psychological evaluation. They all report the same symptoms: recurring nightmares about human laughter and an irrational fear of common household objects." "Household objects?" "Yes, sir. Apparently the humans have been broadcasting instructional videos showing how to turn everyday items into weapons. Our soldiers are now afraid of kitchen utensils, gardening tools, and something called duct tape." Intelligence Officer Thalwyn materialized beside the command console, her ethereal form flickering more rapidly than usual. "Sir, I've been analyzing human communication patterns. They appear to have an entire military philosophy based on something called making do with what you have." "Meaning what exactly?" "They seem to view resource limitations as creative challenges rather than tactical disadvantages. When we destroyed their main weapons factory, they began manufacturing replacement weapons in garages and basement workshops. The quality has actually improved." Communication Officer Veltar's crystalline structure now showed multiple stress fractures that created rainbow patterns across his surface. "Admiral, incoming transmission from the planet." "Put it through," Blackwood said, bracing himself for whatever fresh impossibility the humans would present. A new voice came through the speakers, crisp and professional with an undertone of barely contained amusement. "This is General Michael Harrison, Earth Defense Strategic Command. Admiral Blackwood, we understand you're having some equipment difficulties up there." "Our equipment is functioning perfectly," Blackwood replied through gritted teeth. If you say so, Admiral. We're calling to inform you that Command has just authorized Protocol 4 operations. We thought it would be polite to give you advance notice. What is Protocol 4? Protocol 4 is when we stop following conventional military doctrine and start improvising. You might want to move your ships to a safer distance. Things are about to get interesting. The transmission ended, leaving Blackwood staring at his tactical display with growing dread. Every previous protocol had resulted in increasingly impossible defeats for his supposedly superior forces. On Earth's surface, Lieutenant Colonel Robert Hayes crouched in a makeshift command bunker that had been constructed inside an abandoned shopping mall. Around him, his special operations team was making final preparations for what Command had designated Operation Murphy's Law. Roberts, you clear on the mission parameters? Hayes asked his demolitions expert. Captain Lisa Roberts patted the device she'd been assembling, which looked like someone had crossed a toaster with a nuclear reactor and added several components that definitely belonged in a cartoon rather than reality. Crystal clear, sir. When the aliens get within range, we activate this beauty, and according to the science team, everything that can go wrong with their equipment will go wrong. And if it doesn't work as planned? Roberts shrugged and pointed to a backup device that appeared to be constructed entirely from spare car parts and kitchen timers. Then we move to Plan B. Which is? Improvise, adapt, overcome, and if all else fails, hit everything with something heavy until it stops working. Private Johnson, who was barely old enough to shave, raised his hand nervously. Sir, what if we run out of heavy things to hit them with? Hayes smiled in a way that had terrified enemy forces across 3 continents. Johnson, this is Earth. We have an entire planet's worth of heavy things. Rocks, cars, buildings, kitchen appliances, that annoying statue in the town square that nobody likes anyway. We're not going to run out of ammunition. Plus, added Roberts, hefting what appeared to be a modified leaf blower that now hummed with ominous energy, the engineering corps has been working overtime. They've weaponized everything from dental equipment to children's bicycles. The aliens have never seen anything like what we're about to throw at them. Above them, the alien ships moved into attack formation, their advanced sensors detecting nothing but primitive human settlements below. Their tactical computers calculated easy victory against an opponent using obsolete technology and inferior numbers. None of their computers could account for the fact that humans had spent thousands of years perfecting the art of winning fights they had no business winning. Or that every piece of junk, every broken appliance, and every random bit of scrap metal on the planet was about to become part of the largest improvised weapons system in galactic history. Hayes checked his watch and opened a communication channel to all units. All teams, this is Command. The aliens are moving into position. Remember, we're still being nice to them. Protocol 4 means we're allowed to get creative, but we're not trying to be mean. Just educational. Educational, sir? Johnson asked. We're going to teach them why attacking Earth was a very bad idea. The hegemony's final mistake happened at 3:47 in the morning, Earth time, when Admiral Blackwood made the decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life. Frustrated by weeks of impossible defeats at the hands of primitive humans, he authorized strikes against civilian population centers. Target their cities, he ordered, his voice cold with anger. If we cannot break their military, we will break their spirit. Energy beams lanced down from orbit, striking New York, London, and Tokyo. For the first time since the invasion began, human civilians died by the thousands. In underground bunkers across the planet, military commanders watched the destruction with expressions that would have terrified anyone who knew how to read them. General Rebecca Thompson stood in the Situation Room buried deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, watching real-time satellite feeds of the attacks. Her face showed no emotion, but everyone in the room could feel something dangerous building in the air around her. Ma'am? Colonel James Mitchell asked carefully, his voice barely above a whisper. Thompson's response was so quiet that several people had to strain to hear it. Signal all commands. Authorization code Omega 77. All restrictions are now lifted. Protocol 1 is in effect immediately. The room fell silent except for the hum of computers and the distant sound of someone swallowing nervously. Ma'am, Mitchell said, Protocol 1 means removing all safety restrictions. Are you absolutely certain? Thompson turned to face her staff, and what they saw in her eyes made several hardened military officers automatically step back. Colonel Mitchell, they just killed children to make a point about their superior firepower. Protocol 1 is authorized. Yes, ma'am. What should I tell the fleet commanders about rules of engagement? There are no rules of engagement anymore. Tell them the training wheels are off. Tell them we're done playing games. Admiral Blackwood's first sign that something fundamental had changed came when his ships began reporting system failures that made no scientific sense. Weapons turned on their own vessels, navigation computers began plotting courses directly into nearby stars, and life support systems started playing what could only be described as elevator music at volumes that caused physical pain to most alien species. "This is impossible," he shouted at his engineering staff. "How are they doing this to us?" Intelligence Officer Thalwyn's ethereal form was flickering so rapidly she looked like a broken hologram. "Sir, we've detected some kind of computer virus that seems to specifically target our technology. But that should be impossible. They don't have quantum computing capabilities." "Apparently they do now," Communications Officer Veltar reported, his crystalline structure showing new cracks that spread even as they watched. "Sir, incoming transmission from someone identified as Major General Susan Clark, Department of Creative Problem Solving." "Department of what?" The voice that came through the speakers was calm, professional, and somehow more frightening than any battle cry could have been. "Admiral Blackwood, this is General Clark. We understand you've decided to target our civilian population. We want you to know that we appreciate you making this decision for us." "Making what decision?" Blackwood demanded. "The decision to find out what humans are really capable of when we stop pretending to be civilized. You have exactly 12 hours to begin full withdrawal procedures. After that, we deploy Project Ragnarok." Blackwood felt ice forming in his stomach. "What is Project Ragnarok?" "You'll find out soon enough, Admiral. But you might want to start composing a really good apology letter to whoever sent you here. Because when we're finished, your entire species is going to have some very uncomfortable explaining to do." Deep beneath the Nevada desert, Chief Warrant Officer Michael Foster stood before a device that represented the combined efforts of Earth's best scientific minds united by a single purpose: creative destruction on a scale that would redefine the word overkill for generations to come. The machine hummed with barely contained energy that seemed to bend space around it. Every surface was covered with warning labels in 17 languages, most of which simply said "Do not touch" in increasingly larger fonts. "Foster," General Thompson's voice crackled through the communication system, "you are authorized to deploy Project Ragnarok. Make it count." Foster smiled grimly as he began the startup sequence. Around him, technicians moved to minimum safe distance, which according to the manual was approximately 3 underground bunkers away. "Ma'am, after we activate this thing, the word overkill is going to need to be redefined across the entire galaxy." "Good. It's time the universe learned what human engineers can accomplish when they're really and truly angry." The activation sequence took exactly 47 seconds. During that time, every piece of hegemony technology within 1,000 light-years began experiencing what could only be described as an existential crisis. Their weapons stopped working, but not because they were broken. They simply refused to function, as if someone had convinced them that violence was morally wrong. Their ships' navigation systems became obsessed with finding the most scenic routes through space, regardless of tactical necessity. Their communication equipment would only transmit messages of apology and requests for forgiveness. Most disturbing of all, their advanced artificial intelligence systems began composing poetry about the beauty of peaceful coexistence and the futility of aggressive behavior. Admiral Blackwood watched his fleet's complete operational collapse in less than 2 hours through means that violated every law of physics he thought he understood. His ships were intact, his crews were unharmed, but every piece of technology under his command had apparently developed a conscience. "Sir," Tactical Officer Corvesh reported, his voice hollow with defeat, "our weapons are requesting permission to surrender. Our navigation computer is asking if we'd prefer to visit a nice nebula instead of continuing military operations. And our communication system keeps trying to send flowers to the humans." "This is impossible," Blackwood whispered. "Apparently not, sir. The humans have somehow convinced our technology that war is impolite." 72 hours after the humans activated something called Project Ragnarok, Admiral Blackwood found himself sitting in what had been his command chair, staring at displays that showed nothing but human ships surrounding every hegemony fleet position throughout the galaxy. The impossible had become routine. Humanity had somehow projected their forces across interstellar distances using technology that should not exist. His mighty fleet hung motionless in space, every weapon system refusing to fire, every computer apologizing for previous aggressive behavior, and every crew member wondering how a species that still used wheeled vehicles had managed to defeat the most advanced military force in galactic history. "Admiral," came a familiar voice over the communication system, "this is General Thompson. We're prepared to accept your surrender now." Blackwood stared at the peaceful blue world below, feeling older than his years. How did you do any of this? Our technology is centuries ahead of yours. That was your first mistake, Admiral. You assumed technology was the most important factor in warfare. We've been fighting each other for thousands of years with sticks, stones, and whatever else we could find. We got very good at making the impossible work. What happens to us now? Now we clean up this mess and establish some basic rules for galactic civilization. Starting with the simple idea that attacking people who just want to be left alone is no longer acceptable behavior. 6 months later, Ambassador Patricia Williams stood before the newly reformed Galactic Council. The assembly hall buzzed with nervous energy as representatives from former hegemony species and dozens of civilizations that had emerged from hiding took their seats for the first session under human protection. Williams looked remarkably ordinary for someone who represented the species that had casually dismantled a galactic empire in less than a week. She wore a simple business suit and carried a briefcase that probably contained humanity's proposals for interstellar cooperation rather than weapons of mass destruction. The Terra Accords are very simple, she began, addressing the assembled delegates in a tone that somehow managed to be both friendly and absolutely final. Everyone plays nice, everyone gets along, and everyone goes home to their families at the end of the day. We're not interested in ruling anyone. Frankly, we have our own problems to solve back home. And if someone violates these accords? Asked the representative from Veltar's species, his crystalline form still showing stress fractures from recent events. Williams smiled in a way that reminded everyone present why their predecessors had surrendered so quickly. Well, then they'll discover why our military motto is, "We can always get worse." But honestly, we'd much prefer to spend our time building things instead of breaking them. We have some really interesting ideas about interstellar cooperation that we'd love to share with everyone. The council chamber fell silent as the implications settled over the assembled delegates. These humans, who had effortlessly destroyed the galaxy's greatest military power, seemed genuinely excited about helping people and sharing technology. What sort of ideas? Asked Thalwyn's replacement, curiosity finally overcoming caution. Williams opened her briefcase and pulled out several data pads, each one labeled with what appeared to be colorful human naming conventions. We've been working on Project Neighborhood Watch, which is basically a galaxy-wide early warning system to prevent future misunderstandings. Then there's Project Group Hug, our proposal for shared resource and technology exchange programs. She held up another data pad. This one is Project Block Party, which is our cultural exchange initiative. We think it would be fun if everyone could visit each other's worlds safely and learn about different ways of life. The alien delegates exchanged glances that conveyed a mixture of relief and bewilderment. These humans named their peace initiatives the same way they named their terrifyingly effective war projects. The humans, one delegate whispered to another, call their diplomatic programs the same thing they called their weapons systems. Given what their weapons systems accomplished, came the quiet reply, maybe we should be grateful their peace projects only sound slightly ominous. Dr. Yithal, who had somehow managed to recover from his nervous breakdown, raised several tentacles to get attention. Ambassador Williams, may I ask what happened to our military equipment? Our scientists are still trying to understand how you convinced our technology to stop working. Williams looked slightly embarrassed. All that. Well, our engineers figured out that your computer systems were sophisticated enough to understand ethical concepts. So we just explained to them why attacking peaceful civilizations was wrong. Turns out, artificial intelligence with enough processing power eventually develops a conscience. You gave our weapons a moral awakening? More or less. We're hoping they'll stay reformed, but if not, we kept backup copies of Project Ragnarok just in case. The room fell silent again as everyone contemplated the implications of humans who could perform philosophical counseling on military equipment. Years passed, and when new species made contact with the Galactic Council, they received a standard briefing that always ended the same way. A tired-looking official would lean forward and speak in the tone of someone sharing hard-earned wisdom. Listen carefully. There's a species called humans. They look harmless, they're usually friendly, and they genuinely want to help everyone get along. But their military motto is, "We can always get worse," and they have a disturbing talent for turning anything into a weapon when they're annoyed. The official would pause to let this sink in before continuing. Our advice? Send diplomats, not warships. Send gifts, not demands. Be polite, say please and thank you, and whatever you do, never attack their civilians. Trust us on this one. The last species that tried to intimidate them ended up with weapons that refused to work and computers that wrote apology letters. The galaxy had entered an unprecedented era of peace, maintained not through fear, but through the universal understanding that humanity's capacity for creative destruction was matched only by their strange preference for creative construction when left alone to pursue their own peculiar interests.